Something inside you has been quietly asking for your attention. Not loudly, not urgently, but persistently. It shows up in the moments when the noise of the world finally dies down, when you're alone with your thoughts and there's a strange tightness in your chest you can't explain, when you wake up earlier than your alarm already exhausted, not because you didn't sleep, but because your soul feels like it's been carrying something for a very long time, and you've been trying to name this feeling. Restlessness, confusion, a sense of being out of place in your own life. The hardest part is that from the outside, nothing looks obviously wrong. You're still showing up, still functioning, still doing what's expected of you. But internally, something feels misaligned, like you're living one step behind who you actually are. Like your body is here, but your spirit is somewhere else, quietly waiting for you to catch up. And that's not weakness. That's awareness beginning to surface. You're standing at a quiet crossroads right now, even if no one else can see it. A place where the old ways of being no longer fit, but the new ones haven't fully revealed themselves yet. And that space, the space between who you were and who you're becoming, can feel unbearable. It's lonely. It's disorienting. It feels like you're running out of time while also being asked to wait. Like you're being pulled forward by something invisible while being held back by everything familiar. This is where many people turn back. They numb themselves. They distract themselves. They convince themselves that this discomfort is just life and learn to live smaller inside it. They lower their expectations. They silence their questions. They trade curiosity for comfort and call it maturity. But something in you hasn't allowed that. Instead, you've been feeling everything more deeply. The questions feel heavier. The silence feels louder. You're less interested in surface-level conversations, less excited by things that used to energize you, less willing to perform roles you once played so well. And that can be frightening, because it feels like parts of your identity are dissolving, like the versions of yourself you once relied on are slipping through your fingers, like the map you used to navigate life no longer makes sense. But what no one tells you is this dissolution is not loss. It is divine preparation. It is preparation for a destiny that was mapped out for you long before you ever arrived in this realm. There is a stage in every soul's journey where the old structures must weaken before the new ones can form, where certainty disappears so truth can emerge, where comfort dissolves so courage can develop, where distractions fall away so clarity can finally speak. And yes, this stage is exhausting. It's the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix, the kind of tired that vacations don't heal, the kind of tired that comes from carrying unanswered questions in your chest, from constantly trying to figure things out with your mind when the answers aren't meant to come from there. You've been searching for clarity, but clarity hasn't arrived the way you expected. Instead, life has been quietly, gently, and sometimes painfully removing what no longer aligns. Relationships that feel different now, goals that suddenly feel hollow, dreams that once motivated you but now feel heavy just thinking about them, paths that once seemed right but now feel like resistance instead of flow. And that can make you wonder, did I fail? Did I choose wrong? Did I waste time? But this isn't punishment. And it isn't random. This is what happens when your soul is ready to move beyond survival and into purpose. This is what happens when you're no longer meant to just cope, but to actually live. And that's where fear creeps in. Because stepping into what's next means letting go of what's familiar. It means admitting that you've outgrown certain versions of yourself. It means releasing identities that once protected you but now limit you. It means trusting something you can't fully see yet. And trust is difficult, especially when you've been hurt before. When life hasn't always been gentle with you, when uncertainty once cost you deeply, when chaos taught you to cling to control just to survive. So instead, you've been standing still, not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, not because you lack ambition, but because you're scared of choosing wrong. And here's the truth, heavy but honest. Staying still has its own cost. The quiet ache you feel right now, the low-grade sadness that follows you even on good days, the feeling that something is missing even when nothing is technically wrong. That's what happens when your inner world is ahead of your outer life, when your soul has already moved forward, but your circumstances haven't caught up yet. That tension, that discomfort, that restlessness, that's the signal. Something is trying to reach you, not through loud signs, not through dramatic events, not through chaos or collapse, but through feeling, through discomfort, through the subtle knowing that once it arrives, you can't unfeel it. You didn't imagine this shift. You didn't make it up. You're not overthinking, and you're not behind. You are early. There is a reason this awakening didn't come when you were younger. A reason it didn't arrive before you built resilience, before you learned empathy through pain, before you developed emotional depth through disappointment, before you understood loss, heartbreak, betrayal, exhaustion, and recovery. What's unfolding now requires the depth you've earned. That's why this season feels heavier than others, because it matters. Your sensitivity right now isn't fragility, it's refinement. Your emotional intensity isn't instability, it's attunement. You're picking up on layers of life you once moved too fast to notice. You're hearing truths you once drowned out with noise. You're feeling things you once avoided because you didn't yet feel safe enough to feel them. And that awareness comes with grief. Grief for the person you thought you'd be by now. Grief for the timelines that didn't unfold. Grief for the dreams that had to die so better ones could breathe. Grief for the versions of yourself that did their best with what they knew. Let that grief exist. Don't rush it. Don't suppress it. Don't shame it. It's part of the initiation. But don't mistake this mourning for failure. Because what's actually happening is that your soul is shedding what it no longer needs to carry into the next chapter. Old expectations, old fears, old identities, old self-betrayals disguised as practicality, old compromises you made just to feel accepted, safe, or understood. That's why things feel unstable. Not because your life is falling apart, but because it's being rearranged. Not because you're lost, but because you're being reoriented. Not because you're breaking, but because you're being rebuilt. And here's the part that may land deep in your chest. Not in your mind, not in your thoughts, but in that quiet space inside you that already knows the truth before you can explain it. You were never meant to live a life that constantly feels like effort. Not the kind of effort that builds something meaningful, but the exhausting kind. The kind that feels like resistance instead of growth. The kind that feels like swimming upstream just to survive your own days. You were never meant to wake up every morning already bracing yourself, already tired before the day has begun, already preparing for emotional weight before you've even opened your eyes. Not because your life is objectively unbearable, but because your spirit feels like it's been carrying too much for too long without rest. You were never meant to spend your years suppressing what you feel just to keep the peace, swallowing your truth so others can stay comfortable, shrinking your emotions so rooms don't feel awkward, silencing your needs so relationships don't feel fragile. You were never meant to mistake endurance for strength or emotional numbness for maturity. You were never meant to ignore the quiet calling inside you just to fit into a world that doesn't reflect who you're becoming. You were never meant to abandon your inner voice just to belong. You were never meant to betray your own becoming just to stay familiar to people who only know the old version of you. You were never meant to survive your life. You were meant to inhabit it, to feel it, to move through it awake, to experience your days as something you live, not something you endure. And the reason this message is landing now, not months ago, not years ago, not before you were ready, is because you are closer than you think to a turning point. Not a dramatic overnight transformation, not a movie-style breakthrough with perfect lighting and sudden certainty, not a miracle moment that solves everything all at once, but something far more powerful, a moment of internal clarity that doesn't shout, that doesn't demand attention, that doesn't arrive with fireworks, but quietly rearranges how you move forward forever. The kind of clarity that doesn't change your entire life in one day, but changes the direction of your life in one decision. The kind of clarity that doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but teaches you how to walk with it without fear. And the next step won't require you to have everything figured out. It won't require certainty. It won't require confidence. It won't require bravery, the way movies define bravery. It won't require perfection. It won't require you to suddenly know exactly who you are or where you're going. It will only require honesty. Honesty about what drains you, not just physically, but emotionally, not just at work, but in relationships, not just in public, but in private, when no one is watching and you finally admit how tired you really are. Honesty about what you've been tolerating, out of fear of change, out of fear of conflict, out of fear of disappointing others, out of fear of admitting that something you once chose no longer fits who you've become. Honesty about what you're pretending doesn't matter, even though it's been quietly hurting you, even though it's been shaping your mood, even though it's been influencing your energy, even though it's been stealing pieces of your joy in ways you can't fully explain. Honesty about what your soul has been whispering, while your mind has been busy negotiating comfort, negotiating safety, negotiating familiarity, negotiating stability, negotiating staying the same because change feels unpredictable. And once you choose that honesty, things begin to rearrange. Not instantly, not magically, not dramatically, but organically, in subtle ways at first, in quiet shifts, in emotional recalibrations, in conversations that suddenly feel different, in realizations that land without effort, in decisions that feel lighter than you expected. Support appears, not always from where you thought it would, but from where you actually need it. Timing shifts, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you stop forcing things that aren't aligned. Energy changes, not because your circumstances transform overnight, but because your relationship to them does. And doors begin to open that weren't visible before. Not because they didn't exist, but because you weren't ready to walk through them yet. Not because opportunity wasn't present, but because alignment hadn't arrived. This is where faith becomes practical, not blind belief, not wishful thinking, not spiritual bypassing, not pretending everything is fine when it's not forcing positivity over pain, but grounded trust, the kind that says, I don't need to force what's meant to unfold through alignment. I don't need to chase what's meant to meet me. I don't need to control what's meant to grow naturally. I don't need certainty to take the next honest step. You are not being asked to leap recklessly. You are being asked to stop shrinking. And there is a difference. One destroys stability, the other restores truth. One abandons safety, the other rebuilds authenticity. One is chaos, the other is courage. Something in the universe is trying to reach you right now, not through fear, not through pressure, not through punishment, not through urgency, but through resonance, through recognition, through a feeling you can't shake, through a quiet knowing that this moment matters, even if you don't yet know why. And it's not demanding perfection. It's not asking for mastery. It's not requiring certainty. It's not expecting you to have everything figured out. It's asking for participation. It's asking you to show up honestly, to listen deeply, to take yourself seriously enough to stop dismissing what you feel, to stop minimizing what hurts, to stop postponing what matters, because the life ahead of you will require your full presence, not your perfection, not your certainty, not your confidence, your presence. And you wouldn't be feeling this pull if you weren't capable of meeting it. As this message settles, let yourself breathe for a moment. Not shallow breathing, not rushed breathing, not survival breathing, but the kind that reaches your chest, your ribs, your belly, the kind that tells your nervous system, I'm safe enough to slow down. I'm safe enough to feel. I'm safe enough to listen. Let your body register the relief of being understood. Not fixed, not solved, not healed overnight, just understood. Because sometimes that alone loosens the weight you've been carrying. You're not lost, you're not broken, you're not behind, you're not failing, you're not weak, you're in transition. And transitions feel like this. They feel foggy, they feel heavy, they feel uncertain, they feel lonely, they feel exhausting, they feel like standing between who you were and who you're becoming, without yet recognizing yourself in either direction. But they also feel honest. They feel real. They feel alive. They feel raw. They feel meaningful. They feel like the beginning of something you can't yet name, but already recognize, already sense, already feel pulling at you quietly from within. Before we close, I want you to anchor this moment with me, not as a performance, not as motivation, not as a trend, but as a declaration to yourself first, to your nervous system, to your future, to whatever greater intelligence you believe in. Write this in the comments as your commitment to alignment. I am ready to move forward with trust. Not trust in perfection, not trust in certainty, not trust in guaranteed outcomes, but trust in your honesty, trust in your intuition, trust in your capacity to grow, trust in your ability to adapt, trust in your resilience, trust in your becoming. Let that be your promise, not to a perfect outcome, but to your own truth, not to certainty, but to courage, not to comfort, but to alignment, not to staying the same, but to becoming more yourself. And if this message reached something tender inside you, something tired, something hopeful, something forgotten, something waiting, share it with someone who feels lost, someone who feels exhausted, someone who feels quietly awake, but unsure what to do with that awareness. Not to convince them of anything, not to fix them, not to save them, but simply to remind them they're not alone on this path. Because when one soul listens, it creates permission for others to do the same. And that is how real change begins.